Hello, welcome to the 2013 Hundie Challenge. Today we're going to be discussing Revisiting Giving Head by Evil Concarne. Dee-doo-dee-doo-doo, dee-doo-doo-doo-doo-dee-doo-doo-doo, dee-doo-dee-doo-doo, dee-doo-doo-doo-dee-doo-doo-doo. I'm glad this book wasn't terrible, because there is a ton of Evelyn Waugh books on this list. And if they were all going to be like that horrible Virginia Woolf book that I read, I was going to be pretty upset. So I'm glad to report, I'm happy for myself and for all my viewers, both of you, to report that this was not a terrible book at all. This was another one of the ones that I listened to on tape, and I don't remember exactly what I said about Light in August. But regarding this one, Jeremy Northam, you need to give up on the accents, buddy. Okay? This guy had some of the most ridiculous, affected accents I have ever heard. I understand that that's kind of part and parcel of doing an audio recording for a book. You know, you're supposed to invest every character with a slightly different accent. Makes me feel bad for the guy that's doing, the Song of Ice and Fire, since there's like 350 talking parts or something. But, most people, and up to and including that Mark Hammer or whatever his name was that did Light in August, he just adjusted his voice a little bit, so like you could tell who was speaking. This guy had the most ridiculous, mincing, just the Canadian guy was ridiculous accented. The guy that was sort of like a foppish, I guess he was supposed to be gay, was just one of the most like mincing, ridiculous voices. The women all say, like if you were imitating a woman. And, Mark Hammer never did that when he was imitating a woman. He just, changed his voice slightly. But anyway, that's all. That's just, a little bit of a distraction regarding the recording format. Regarding the content of the novel, it was one of these, British turn of the century kind of novels that are usually kind of dull and kind of about appearances and that kind of thing. This was a little less awful in that regard than, say, I don't know, A Room with a View or something, because it actually kind of had a plot. It was actually kind of about alcoholism. The one character, I'm going to forget all these people's names. Anyway, the one guy that was always playing with his teddy bear, and his name escapes me, but he suffered at first from Arrested Development. He was obsessed with his teddy bear at the age of 19, and his nanny. But then when he got over that, he became a raging alcoholic. And so the book would kind of remind you of like Days of Wine and Roses, except this was so... I'm guessing this was before AA, even, if I'm remembering my history correctly. The social workers I used to work for would probably yell at me for not knowing when AA was founded. But it was kind of funny that they had this raging, like clearly alcoholic guy, and he'd be like, "Could I have just a sip of port?" And, his family trying to take care of him would be like, yes, just bring a sip of port. Or, instead of bringing the whole decanter of whiskey, just bring him a whiskey. So it's kind of funny looking at that kind of 1920s, 1930s style way of treating alcoholism. Like, oh, well, we'll just kind of cut back and hope everything goes well. So it was kind of an upsetting look at alcoholism. It also dealt with, which I don't know that I necessarily got into this, with The Good Soldier by Ford Madox Ford, because that was just a depressing, miserable slog of a book. But in that book, they talked a little bit about English Catholics. And this, Brideshead Revisited, was also about English Catholics and their trials and travails and woes. And basically, I don't know what the case is today, but I gather that even up until the mid-20th century, English Catholics were denied a lot of rights. They were kind of like a class apart. They kind of were almost what you would think of as like the traditional ghettoization of Jews. The Catholics like weren't allowed to hold certain offices. They all kind of had to intermarry with one another. They could only do certain jobs and that kind of thing. And so a lot of this book was hung up on the main character was an atheist, Ryder, and it's terrible when you don't actually read the book, you don't catch their names. Same as watching TV, I guess. Anyway, Ryder is an atheist, or I guess he's an agnostic, and he kind of is constantly shitting on this family of English Catholics that he's, taking care of the alcoholic son and all that kind of thing. And, he's constantly talking about, oh, well, it's so screwed up being Catholic, but, even if it weren't, you're English, and, their marriages are screwed up because they can't divorce, and none of the English Protestants understand why that is. So it kind of had some, deep matters that it was examining. Arrested development and alcoholism and religious discrimination. And there was also, I kind of got the hint, whatever, I'm not a great critic or whatever, if you couldn't tell from the other videos I've done. But I got the hint that the main character and his friend were kind of suggested to be homosexual lovers. I don't know if Waugh never came out and said that because of the time frame when the book was written. Maybe it just had to be implied then. But it was pretty strongly implied. Of course, they all go on to get married in various states of unhappiness. I wouldn't even go so far as to say as varying states of happiness. Varying states of unhappiness is what they got married in. But it's kind of suggested that in their youth, when they were, I think it was Oxford that they were going to, that they were gay lovers. So it also kind of touched upon that. And like I said, not as terrible as some of those old kind of, I don't know what you would call them. Is this what you would call a parlor book? I don't know. Where it just seems like it's just like English lords and ladies talking about what's right and proper, and somebody being like, well, damn that for love. And the consequences are always terrible when you say damn that for love. I'm sure there's a name for that subgenre, but I cannot come up with it. So, yeah, not too terrible. I hope her books are all kind of on that par or better, because I've got a lot more to read. So thanks for tuning in. Next time we'll be talking about I, Claudius by Robert Graves.